Okay, so I want to get some lights into this space now, and so just to remind you, the most important thing, as I've shown you in the earlier videos, is to make sure you can see your ceiling in your ceiling plan and work with it effectively to place your lights if they need to be ceiling hosted. And so I have a ceiling here which I have the edge of just there, so I can select it easily and see the ceiling. It already has some lights in it, but I'm going to add some more. So have a look in the earlier videos if you're not sure about the creation of your ceilings or the display. I'll just quickly remind you, the view range is often the most important thing you need to look at, and if I open that up you'll see it's set to view the level above, but I've taken it a little bit higher, and that's a really good tip. Even if you're not working as high as the level above, in this case I'm working mainly below that level, so my lights will go in below level 1, in other words. It still can be useful to pick up things that are just above the level that you're looking towards. And then the view depth needs to be set at least as high as the top. You can make it higher if you like, but in my case I don't need to. But again, especially with ceiling plans, you really need to look at your view range settings quite often. The cut plane I've got quite low so that I can pick up openings, and that'll help with the placement of my lights. And then another option that can be useful with ceiling plan views is to turn on the underlay. And here, this is my ground floor ceiling plan. I'm going to set the underlay also to ground floor, and that way it's going to show things like the furniture on this level. If you still can't see the furniture, you can use things like reference planes and other tools like that to mark where you want the lights to go. But it really can help if you can see things like furniture, because often that's what you want picked up with your lighting. Okay, so then on architecture, I'm going to simply go to component, and I'll just show you the light that I've loaded. Downlight recessed can glow is one that I've made from the default in the library. When you go to the main lighting folder, you'll see there's a recessed can. The issue with that light is that it doesn't have a fitting that glows, so I've simply modified the glass material to make it glow a bit more, and you'll find that in the Revit library if you go to our Revit library, if you go to lighting fixtures, and there it is, downlight recessed can glow. And have a look in these larger libraries, you'll see there are lots of other useful lights there as well. Okay, so I've got that light. I'm just going to place one, and then I just want to show you a little bit about how lights work in the family. So if I select the position of that light, I can cancel it and then just select the light and go to Edit Family, so that you can see how lights are made. And you can see then it's got in a light family a light source. And light sources are basically set up as individual elements, and that's a big issue you'll have with things like track lighting and other lights where you try to have a group of lights together. It's very difficult to do that in the one family. So with track lights, I'd highly recommend that you still place the lights individually and just model the track as a separate thing, and they work a lot better rather than trying to do that. You can, if you really push it, you can make the track lights work as one family, but it's making Revit do something it doesn't really want to do. So if you instead treat them as individual families, each light source, and the reason it's set up like that is because basically when you go to adjust the light's brightness, these parameters, which I'll come back to, these are the parameters you use to control the brightness and the other properties of your light, they're set to operate on this light source element. Okay, so again, if I select this light source element that you have in the any lighting family, it's good just to see these properties you have with the light source definition. And these are the options you have for the emission of light from that source. And so you can emit from these different shapes. So they're all flat. Right? And this is a limitation in Revit. In other programs that use mental array lights, you can emit from sources that have a volume, like spheres and other shapes. But in this case, you can only emit from flat shapes. So basically points, lines, rectangles and circles. That is what you're limited to. In this case, it's not even emitting from a circle. You could set it to emit from a circle to get a true distribution from the light source here, but there's no need for that, and it makes the lights more complicated than they need to be. So having it set on point here is fine. That's what it's emitting from, and then you have the distribution down below, and in this case, that is what you want spot for a downlight. The other two, spherical, emits in all directions evenly. So for pendant lights, that's really useful, where you want it to go up and down, and every other direction, left and right as well. And then the other main option is hemispherical, which basically you can see emits in all directions downwards. So it doesn't go up at all, just down, but in a hemispherical pattern. But spot's a very good one. It gives you lots of options for the control of the cone of light that comes from the emission shape. The final one, web, is actually the most realistic. So with photometric web, you can use, if you do a bit of research, you'll find there are files that the Illumination Engineering Society make, basically engineers who work with lighting, and they give you a correct distribution of lights. And I'll show you when we go into 3ds Max how that can be really useful. It gives really highly realistic lighting, but it's the most difficult to control. So that one, it is the best in some ways, but probably the one you'd use the least at first. So the first three are the main ones, and I'm going to leave this on spot. I'll change it though just for now to spherical, so you can see the change in the icon. Back to here, hemispherical, again you'll see the icon change, and then with spot, I'll undo back to that. With spot, it's going to show you the cone. But notice it's got two cones there. There's an inner cone and an outer cone. So the inner cone shows the maximum brightness of the light, that's where it's going to be at its brightest, and then the outer cone shows where it is going to be reduced to 0. So that gives you a distribution, and in other words it'll let you have either a hard-edged or a soft-edged light depending on how close these values are. Alright, so in here, in the family types, I can change the, just going down, change the spot angle, which is the outer cone. I'll make that, say, 50, and then the beam angle I'll make 45. Okay, so those values are close together, so we're not going to have much fall off between the brightest part of the light and the part where it reaches 0. So we have a really hard edge to that light. Previously, the way it was set up, that will give you a very soft edge. Okay, so the brightness and other things you will have seen in there in the family types, and you can adjust the intensity there. But I'll come back to that when I use it in the project. So I'll close this file now. I just want to show you how those lights can be set up. And also, this is a ceiling hosted light. So if I go to a elevation view, you'll see if there's a ceiling in there, that usually gives you a pretty good indication that it's ceiling hosted. Here we are, there's a ceiling that I can select, and that tells me this is a ceiling hosted light. It's all to do with the template that was used to begin this light family. And I mean, don't be scared of making your own light families when you go and make a new family. You've got options there for all sorts of different lighting families. So quite a few. And you can see some of these are ceiling based. So there's one, metric linear lighting fixture ceiling based. Another one here, metric lighting fixture ceiling based. And wall based you have there. And so they're hosted by different elements. They have to be attached to either a ceiling or a wall. But this one isn't hosted. So it just gives you a light that you can have as a floating light. And if you want to have something that isn't hosted, you can always make your own and set them to, we'll start with this template, and then you can just set them to any height and position you like. So I'll just close that one now. Right, so in the project, another couple of issues you'll have with lights, I'll come back to the intensity and other things in a minute, but I'm just going to try to copy this light to show you what can happen once you've placed them successfully. If you then try to copy them, if they're hosted especially, it'll often do something like this. So there it's telling me can't place inserts outside of hosts. So in other words, it won't be copied. Now, in some cases it'll give you a different warning. It'll tell you that it's got a duplicate item in the same position. It'll come up with a warning down here. That means it has copied it, but it's copied it on top of itself. So there are lots of issues when you come to copying lights, and it's often better just to place them again using the component tool to place a new light. So I'll just put a few in here, and then I'll line them up afterwards. Now I don't have a ceiling there, so I can't place a light there. I can put one down here, and I'll put another one just roughly about here in line with the column. Okay, so those lights aren't lined up very accurately, but afterwards you can use the Align tool, and you'll find when you click on a light using Align, it'll give you a centre line, and it gives you one in each direction. So here I've got a centre line, and I can then go and choose the centre of the light I want it to line up with, or want to line up with it. And again, I can choose that centre line and then go to the next one. Same thing going along. Oops. Okay, so make sure you realise most families in Revit have these centre lines set up within the family, and that allows you to line things up fairly easily. And then going the other way, oops, you can use the other centre line. That one's already lined up. And so if you're not using the Align tool very much, just make sure again you realise that you can always reset it by clicking into a blank spot, and that'll let you choose a new edge. I actually want to go the other way, so this one, yeah, and then this one. Right, so lots of different ways of lining up lights, and of course you can always just select them and use tools like move and copy. So I might then make a different light in a moment as well, with making more of a surface mounted or a pendant light. But I'm going to go to the perspective view and just give you an idea about the way these will render. Okay, so I can see some of those lights there. There's one there. And so now it's good to do this before you go too far with your lights. See how they are rendering before you add in a lot of them. So I'm going to set the quality just to draft, and the resolution on screen, and then the scheme on interior artificial only. So I'm not rendering with the sun will slow it down, and having lots of lights will slow it down, and also having the render quality too high is going to slow it down. I'm going to save that file as well. Often when you do this, the program can crash, so save it often, when you're doing this sort of work. Oh, it just uses a lot of memory, essentially. So the more powerful your computer is, the less it crashes. My new laptop, I leave Revit open for weeks at a time. It's pretty bad, but I do. And it doesn't crash. Very rarely. And that's with the new version, which still isn't fully compatible with the laptop I've got, because it's got a super high def display. Supposedly that's not supported, but it doesn't crash. It works pretty well. These computers aren't too bad, but yeah, other machines, they'll struggle. Yeah. They're changing a lot. I mean, I know it's funny, processors haven't really changed all that much in the last few years, but the other bits of hardware are getting a lot better. Okay, so remember when you're testing out your lights, to first then get a benchmark on how much light you need. Don't go straight to the brightness. Make sure you adjust the exposure to get the lights showing. So remember, the light initially will be set to a brightness that is reasonable. If you haven't changed it, it should be giving you a decent amount of light. And there it is. So with the correct exposure value, mine's about 4, I'll get enough light. Maybe even a little bit brighter again. There we go. So then it's also maybe a little too warm, so at the same time I can adjust the white point to take that warmth down. Right, so now I'll go and look at the light properties on their own. So going to each, or just selecting one of those lights, edit type, and when you go down to the bottom you'll see all of those same properties I showed you in the family. Okay, so I'll start with the tilt angle here won't make any difference. I'll show you another light where that will make a difference in a moment. So then the field angle, I'm going to take that down to say 50, and then the beam angle, again I'll take that up to maybe just 40, so I do get still a softer edge. Okay, and again just doing a quick draft render to see how that affects it. Okay, so you can see now these lights have a much harder edge because the field and the beam angle are closer. So back to the light, again, edit type, and so I'll take those again, I'll take the field angle out further again, back to 80, and the beam angle, I'm going to take that right down to about 20. It's nice to get some variation in the lighting, so it's good to have that, sometimes that wide value. Okay, so you can see now much softer edge, and well, maybe I'll need to take the field angle out just a little bit. So again, 20 is maybe a bit low there, back to maybe 30, 35. Okay, but also you've got then the intensity. Don't change the light loss factor. Generally that's, even if you go to simple, that's changing the way the light works physically, which is usually not a good idea. So avoid that one, but then you have the initial intensity, which is your main control for brightness. If you try to work with watts, I know it's tempting to use watts at first because that's what you're used to seeing on light bulbs and other things, but it's also then needs the efficiency to give you the total brightness. It's better to use the lumens. So if you go to luminous flux, then you can set a value there, and 800 is not too bad. I'll just take it down though so you can see the effect, say to 500, which is a fairly dim light. And again, back to render. Okay, so much softer light there, and probably easier to work with. So now I can put in some other kinds of lights, and I'll look at the spots, and they're a good one to work with and adjust as well. They really can be useful. So instead of just loading it, I'm going to open that file first. So in your Revit library, you'll find the spotlights, or it's in the default library too. So the sorry, not this folder, the other one. So it's in just lighting. That's it, downlight spot. Okay, so this is the light. This is one of the most commonly used lights. And it's a good light because it has the tilt values set up for you. So that means if I go to family types here, you'll see it's got these different preset tilts which let you change the angle of the light. And I even use this light quite often to create pendant lights and other things. Again, it just has the parameters set up in I think a pretty sensible way when you go in and look at the way it's been done. I'm not going to adjust many of those, but I'm going to add some extra tilt values. So here's 60 degrees and 75. It doesn't have that many values, so you can always add in your own. Just if you go to new family type, and so what is it? It's 15 degree increments. So new, and my next one will be 105. And then I'll change the value here to correspond, tilt angle, 105. And I'll just add in one more, 120. Now I'll save this one into the library so you can get to it, but it's obviously easy to do it yourselves as well if you don't have that library. Okay, so I'll save this. That's now in the P drive, so I can just save over it. Oh, okay. It's telling me it's read-only. That's funny. I can access that drive. So I'll just give it a new name. So downlight spot, let's say extra angles. There we go. So that's saved. You can get to that in the P drive library now. I'll load that back into the project. And then here we are. Alright, so it's taken me into a floor plan view. I can't place the light there, but in my ceiling plan again I'll be able to. So here, component, and so unfortunately this light, when you press the space bar, it won't rotate it. So you just need to place it, and I'm going to do that just manually, clicking on the ceiling here. And then after you select it, it will rotate with the space bar. It's one of those funny things. So there you can see that's rotating in 90-degree increments. Just one of those little tricks. And then in my perspective view again, I can't quite see the light, I don't think. Let's see. Is it showing it to me? No. So I'll just stretch out the view a bit. And there's my light. So I can then change the angle. And you can see then that's pointing it towards my screen. So I'll get shadows cast through the screen, or I can even go over the top of the screen, which might be an idea. I actually wanted this light on the next level, but I just wanted to show you that in the perspective view. I'll delete it for next. I'm going to put some different lights into that area, but on my level above, okay, so here where I've got the view set up to work with that decal, I can, another little trick there, go to reveal mode, so I can adjust my section box without having to unhide it. I just want to bring it up so that I can see my ceiling. So I have a ceiling there on the underside of that roof. And so back to light bulb off. With component, it's not letting me place the light in this view, so I have to go to a ceiling plan again. So level 1 in my ceiling plans should let me see my ceiling. There it is. And then I can go and click component and just get it in there. Click to place it. Select it afterwards, space to rotate, and so that's the angle I want. And I'll just drag that along, and I need to get a couple of those. Okay, so then in my view with the section box, I'll adjust these further, but maybe I'll just get the spacing a little bit better. Something like that. And now in, sorry, not that view, the section box. Okay, so now I can see those lights there, and change the tilt angle, so they're pointing towards the wall. So I'll try this one. Just got to orbit the view there to get a better view. Now that's going the opposite way to what I want. So it's 75 degree. That'll do. This one's back to front. So you could use space, I think, to flip it there, or you can, obviously change to a different tilt angle. Okay, so now coming back to my perspective. Again, remember, all of these things are, intensive on the hardware, so save it often. And again, now I can try just doing a test render to see if my lighting levels are still okay. So you see, I've only really worked with about five or 10 lights here up to this point, and I've seen a lot of people who add a lot of lights in and only after that start doing some rendering, and sometimes have by that stage about 100 lights when it will really slow down. I do have other lights in other spaces here, and so I've got 30 lights, which is still, I think, a bit too many, but at least I haven't got a ridiculous amount. So there you can see some nice light coming down from the level above. I'd be happy with that. And so then to just show you some other kinds of lights, if I go now, I'm going to make a new light family. You've got some pretty good options for the sort of light I'm going to show you in the library. Things like the linear lights, which let you move lights up and down without being hosted, and all those other nice things. So here we go, this not the ceiling lights, but the where are we? This uplight strip is a good one because it's floating, and there are others that are similar to that. If you want just a floating light that isn't hosted, and you can make them, you can change the direction of these. Here we go, standalone linear, that's another useful one. Really useful actually. But it has a fitting. And that's a good and a bad thing. If you don't really want that sort of fitting, you have to then modify it. So instead, I'm going to make a new family and use the metric linear fixture. It doesn't really matter which one you start with as long as it's not hosted. Even just metric lighting fixture is okay. But I'll go to metric linear lighting fixture because that's similar to what I want. Okay, so there you can see this long strip, and it's good to investigate it in different views. So there you can see it does have a light source elevation property already set up. So I'm going to change this light source definition to emit from a rectangle, and then I'm going to change it to hemispherical as well. So that's now pointing down. If I go to the left view, I'm going to try to rotate it, and so if I'll probably have to unlock it. Let's just try. If I try rotating now, it'll probably tell me it can't, but let's just see what happens. Yeah, okay, it's telling me constraints aren't satisfied. That's okay, I'll just go to remove constraints. So I've made that side on, and looking at it in a 3D view, you'll get a better idea what it's doing there. So it's coming from this rectangle in the middle. And then to give me a plane to work from, I'll go to the front view, and well, let's look at the light properties first. In the family types there, you've got the light size. So I'm basically trying to make something like a light box, and here it's going to be maybe a little too wide if I leave it at that, so I'll make it just 500, and then the length I'll make again just a round number, 1200 for now. We can tie those to some parameters later, but I'll just leave them as a fixed value for now. Then the elevation, I'll see if it's still tied to the light. If I try dragging that, no, it's not doing anything. So you can attach it again if you really want to, or you can just move the light manually, which I'm doing just with the arrows on the keyboard to nudge that down to the ground. I'll take that even further. And then I'm just going to make an extrusion with a rectangle using that shape. Finish it, and it's going to tell me it's inside solid geometry. That's okay, because I'm going to adjust it. So back in the plan view, I'm just going to take that to one side. So the light source is on the outside of that. And I'm even going to take it just away a little bit to make sure there's no chance of that object blocking the light. And then I'm going to give it a material as well. So I have a glass material which I'm going to duplicate, and I'll call it light plane or something. And then in appearance, I will replace this glass material with one from the library. In the appearance library, in the glass folder, you have light bulb materials. So I'll just go for one of these. So the translucent white, I think, should be about what I'm after. It's got self-illumination turned on already, so I can just leave that. Now it is slightly transparent, but the illumination is going to overpower that anyway. Okay, so that's it. That will give me a plane that's going to emit some light. And so I'll save that. And yeah, I'll save it into the that library that you can get to. So I'll just call it light plane. Load into the project, and again, just make sure I've got the right one. And I'm going to put it behind my screen here. So remember, the box is above the light source, so I'm going to flip that around so the light source is pointing in the right direction. And the height there, I'll just check in the section that it's close to the ground. Where'd it go? Okay, not the best section. Maybe I'll just go and get a different section. That should be it there. There we are. So that's sitting close to the ground. And if I want a few of them, I can always copy those to different heights. So I'll just select all of those. So 3 of them there, and I might just copy okay, so really easy to make your own light fixtures, especially if they're just simple shapes. Okay, so then to test the rendering, again, test it on draft. Okay, so you can see that's really bright, but it's easy now to adjust that brightness in the light properties. So again, that same approach as before. You can see that's on 2,400 lumens, which is very bright compared to the other lights. So I'm going to take it right down to about 300. I don't want this to be that bright at all. The other thing to think about is the temperature. So, do you still have your lighting subject? You didn't do that, right? Yeah, I think you were the first group to miss out. Oh, you did one last year. Okay, you were the last group to get it. So you have some idea about Kelvin values for your lighting, which is good. And if you don't know them off by heart, you can always use these presets as a starting point. So this is a very warm light. Those light boxes tend to be very cool light. So a high Kelvin value is what you want. That's still not that high. It can even go higher than that. So Xenon is going to be higher still. Or if you go to custom, you can just type in your own value. So 5,500 is about what I want. And then, okay, testing that again. Hopefully the shadows, what I'm really after here is shadows coming through that lattice and, you know, making this space a bit more interesting. Okay, so the light is not as bright, but we've also got the material to think about. So going back to the Manage tab, Materials, and the light plane material is also emitting light. So here's self-illumination. I'm going to take that luminance down to just something like 100. So in the preview here, you'll start to see the difference. And the colour temperature, that's actually alright. Okay, so you can see with self-illuminating objects you do need to do quite a bit of testing because you've got the material and the light to work with. But you know, those glowing materials are really common these days. Solid state lighting is really the way of the future with LEDs, and so there's huge potential there, and lots of people are trying out different things. Okay, so you can see it's starting now to be a lot more toned down, and we can see the effect of that light box material much more clearly, and the shadows here you can start to see coming from that. Okay, so then I'll maybe just look at the brightness there again and take that down a little bit further. And then because it's a big plane of light, it probably can be also slightly less bright. If I get the family selected, back to the initial intensity, and I'll try even just about 100 for that. So those glowing materials can look really good, but you want them to be fairly muted usually. You don't want them to overpower the scene or the space. Okay, so yeah, starting to get there. So you can see here we're starting to see again the effect of those downlights much more. Alright, so then finally I've got this outdoor space where I've got things that I probably want to show just with a subtle lighting, and so that's one of the areas where you could use the light. I know a lot of people rely on, but probably too much, studio light. That's just a simple light you can easily adjust and have floating. So I've got a section view here that is going to show that, but I'll just make it a bit bigger. So with a studio light, I think I've got it loaded already. I know, I've purged it. Oh no, here it is, studio light. Okay, so the one in the library, if you don't know, is always available in any of the libraries. And studio light is one, again, don't use it too much. It looks horrible when you can see the object directly. It gives really bad lighting. And so just, don't rely on it too much. But if you want to simulate things like the moonlight, it can be really useful. So with the intensity here, I'm just going to take that right down to let's say about 400 or 500, maybe a bit higher actually, maybe 600. And then the colour, it's a very cool light, moonlight. So xenon. And just place it roughly behind my wall. It's telling me I can't see it in this view, but it's easy then to go and adjust that in another view, bring it up, and then again just doing some testing. behind this wall here, but we should definitely see the effect of that. Okay, so here you can start to see a little bit more, but it's easy now to go and adjust that in wireframe. I can see the light and then just go and increase the brightness. I'm sure you can work that out. So take it up in increments of about 1,000 just to get it to become visible. Okay, so I'm starting to get a lot more visible out there, but maybe it's a bit too close to the car, so again, just one of those things you've got to play with. Okay, so I know it's hard to see on the projector, but on my screen here I can see the brickwork starting to come up there in the background, which is really what I'm after. And then, so finally with the light box there, I want that to have more of a grid pattern anyway, so I'm going to just copy those. So obviously it's going to help to have a section view there. I'll just make a new one actually. So there we go. So that's really at the point where you'd want to start increasing the render quality. So everything up to now has been on draft, and you can work most of the settings out that way. And also at this point you can think about sending it to the cloud if you have your account working, and it's going to bump up the quality obviously without you doing very much more. So it'll pick up all the settings that you've put in so far, obviously the lighting and the materials, but also the lighting scheme you choose, and the sun position if you are using the sun. Okay, so with all of that work done now, again I'll just send it to the cloud. So I'm signed in there, and so again save it when you're at this point, render in cloud, okay, so render quality, final, image size. If you're confident that it's okay, you can just set it to maximum, but for now I'll just set that to extra large. And don't worry about the transparencies, the alpha channel. If you don't, you probably won't be using a background. So that's all. Start rendering. It'll tell you if it's missing any maps. And there, it's looking like it's okay. And it'll take, just 20 minutes or so on the cloud usually. Okay, so that's uploaded, and if you go to your login button, render progress, and it will unfortunately use Internet Explorer to log in. Now you'll see it there, it's just you can't adjust the exposure with IE. Won't even let me zoom there. Let's go. There we go. Okay, so that's showing the render progress. Like I was saying, to adjust the exposure, you can't use IE. So a good trick there, just copy the address, Control C, and open up Chrome. Paste it in there. There we go. Log in again. And it'll open up the same page in Chrome. You might have to sign in again. There we go. And it'll take you to the same page, but with obviously Chrome, and it gives you options that IE doesn't. Okay, so there we are. The progress is a bit further along as well. So notice I didn't have to set the exposure or anything. It does the exposure for you automatically, which is a nice thing. But you can then adjust it within the browser. Unfortunately, it looks like my decal has been messed up. That's a common thing. So notice I've got this decal here. There, the scale is totally out. So it's loaded it, but the scale is off. And that's a common issue with the cloud, the scaling of the textures. It's to do with the metric and imperial thing, I'm pretty sure. Because they seem to be out by about 25.4, which is the number of millimetres in an inch. And so there's not much you can do to get around that, unfortunately. You just have to put up with it and fix it in Photoshop afterwards. It's just one of those annoying things. I don't think Autodesk are really onto it yet. But otherwise it does a pretty good job for your renders. If you render locally, I'll just leave that one going. So remember, you can always render locally. You've got plenty of computers in here at the moment. You can see how many computers are just sitting there doing nothing. So you can always save your file and then just go to open it on another computer that you're not working on and render it best. Rendering locally with best quality is going to give you the best quality, better than probably even the cloud. But you need to set the print resolution high enough. So here it's on 150, that's pretty good, but 300 is a lot better. 600 is even better. That's a great resolution. Okay, so those two things affect your quality. Quality and the resolution. So I won't do it on 600, that's going to take too long, but I'll do it on 300. And that should finish, it'll finish today. We'll see how it goes. I'll just let that render away. But let's see how the cloud's going. That will be done in, 10 minutes at most. And, for the work you've been doing, that would be easily high enough quality, especially when you add the entourage in Photoshop and do all that extra work to touch it up once the rendering's finished. But I'll finish the video there.